We've all seen countless videos of different AIs playing chess. However, the most famous of them all is without a doubt ChatGPT.
D4 to D5. That's a pretty alpha move. It basically just shoved my pawn off a cliff.
After watching the latest ChatGPT vs Stockfish rematch, it got me thinking, what if I played against ChatGPT? And not just one game. No, we're talking about a best of 3 match to see if we can unlock its full potential. So today I'm going to put my skills to the ultimate test to prove that humans are still better at chess than AI. We don't talk about Stockfish. Now, ever since ChatGPT has been bullied by the entire chess community, it has managed to improve itself, so hopes were high for an excellent first game. I start out with e4, and ChatGPT responds with c5, aka the Sicilian defense. Named after Cillian Murphy, obviously. What else would it be named after? I respond back with knight to c3, making this the closed variation of the Sicilian defense. Black plays knight to c6, in kind only for me to retaliate with knight to f3. ChatPhD then proceeds to play pawn to d6, its first mistake of the match, as when I play bishop to b5, this knight is not allowed to move anymore. Of course it has a PhD, and bishop to d7 is played as a counter. I do a castle to give my king somewhere safe to stay, followed up by the fourth and final knight brought to f6. All 4 horsemen are now on the battlefield, and things are about to get ugly. I play knight to d5, and supposedly copying me, ChatGPT plays knight to e4, creating a diagonal nightmare. My queen proceeds to move to e2, attacking this knight. Pawn to a6 is pushed, attacking the bishop, but I take the first sacrifice, taking the knight before losing to a bishop in the process. After a pawn moves to c4, ChatGPT decides to go on the offensive and attack the knight guarding the center, and I let my queen take out the last black knight on the board. Black moves bishop to e7, and I slide my queen to g4 in preparation for a sneak attack. And Chat ADHD seeing this actually gives me a helping hand by doing a castle right in front of danger. Now readying myself for a mate in 2, I move the pawn to d3 to let my remaining bishop move freely. Black's king retreats to the top right corner, and I launch the bishop to h6. The only thing stopping this plan from rolling in motion is the rook! The only problem is that my knight is still active and it is now taking a bishop from Team Black. Pawn to g6 is played and proves to be a critical miss, as I can now take the rook with the same knight, and surely ChatGPT's queen will take it back, right? Readying myself for another mate in 2, I move my queen right in front of Black's queen, and in true ChatGPT fashion, it takes out one of its own pawns at e6. I move rook to e1, attacking it, and out of nowhere, knight to h5 spawns in. Seeing the threat, my queen teams up with the rook to allow the knight to take Black's queen. Black's bishop then slides across the board, taking the knight before I send the first check at e8. Black's rook takes it back, but I send my rook up, and it's checkmate, starting off strong with a 1-0 lead. We begin this game with ChatGPT playing e4, and I play e5 in response. White pushes pawn to d4, creating the center game opening. I play knight to c6, followed by black copying me with knight to c3, which is then followed by knight to f6. White plays pawn to e5, threatening the right-sided knight, so I moved it to d5, hoping to make a worthy sacrifice. It does, and both sides lose one knight. ChatGPT reveals the second knight onto the warfield, and I immediately struck a check with bishop to b4, only blocked by a single pawn that moved to c3. Retreating to e7, White's first bishop is left to d3, letting me know to push pawn to d6 to let bishop number 2 loose. White castles and I pin the knight with bishop to g4, and despite a pawn from h3 to make me go away, I take it without remorse. Minutes later, the battle begins to heat up as pieces fly left and right, until ChatGPT finally took off the friendly facade and revealed its true colors by making the move knight to g5, eliminating my own queen from the board. I then do a long castle without a second thought, yet a bishop to f5 leaves a check and forces me to move my king back further. Luckily, ChatGPT isn't perfect and gets its own queen eliminated in the process, allowing me to prepare a sudden check with my only knight left.
Surprise, motherfucker!
Then with this move, I fell into ChatGPT's most sinister trap, resulting in me capturing a rook, only to lose it by an off-screen rook at d1. Here I began to scramble, hoping for anything to happen. A malfunction, a blunder, or even a worthless sacrifice. Nothing showed. As White somehow gets this pawn here, I desperately make the king flee to wherever it could find safe territory, with ChatGPT slowly closing in on its first win. With a bunny level hop of pawn to a7, I backed the rook up to d8 in preparation of a queen promotion, when a rook at a6 became the next response. With no hesitation, I took it, and then... The score is now 1-1. The final battle begins with me playing e4 and ChatGPT playing e5. I send my knight to f3 and black copies with knight to c6, hence why I knew it was time to do bishop to b5, activating the Roy Lopez opening. also called the Spanish opening. The natural response, of course, is pawn to a6, transforming this into the Morphy defense, and after taking the knight, the final transformation of this opening becomes the Ruy Lopez exchange variation. After a safe castle, ChatGPT pushes pawn to d6, which opens up a possible threat if not handled correctly. I rush a pawn to d4, allowing it to be captured to get caught by my queen. Knight to f6 is played, and by pushing a bishop at g5, I am pinning this knight in place of fear of a queen assassination. ChatGPT cleverly maneuvers around this by putting a bishop behind the knight as backup, but I still take the knight regardless. Moving the rook outside its home, black finally moves its other lonely bishop to g4, yet a pawn on h3 has other plans. Backing up to h5, I move my knight to h4 to prepare to land here to take out this troubled one. However, ChatGPT moves bishop to d1, leaving behind a possible chance of winning. Now obviously we need the AI to do something illegal or dumb, and it told me to move bishop to e7. You're already on e7, bud. I finally moved my knight to f5, scaring black to castle, the biggest mistake of the match with only 2 moves needed to win. Moving my beloved queen to its right place, black's king only has 1 spot left to go before I end the game, with queen to g7 for a checkmate, proving once and for all that ChatGPT still has a lot to learn. Humanity lives to play chess for another day.